What's up, guys? Welcome to the channel. And if you stumbled onto this video, it's either because you are thinking about buying a Simder welder, or you already have a Simder welder and you are looking for some instructions on how to use it. There's a lot of videos out there on the interwebs floating around that will show unboxings of these brand new units, or something to that nature, but there's not a lot of in-depth talk about it. And there's also not a lot of people talking about the different quirks and some of the negative things that you may find with this. So I'm going to start out, preface this whole video that I am not sponsored by Simder. I bought this welder with my own hard-earned money, and this Simder is the 4050 Pro. This is the older version. This is not the new one. So if you bought a Simder, or you're thinking about buying a Simder welder 4050 Pro, and you're looking at the newer version, this video is really not going to pertain to that particular unit. I don't know. I've never used that one. I've never even seen it other than looking at the advertisements. Alright guys, so let's get into different processes. So I'm going to go through each one, explain the different quirks and just how everything is set up and what I have learned. I'm going to try to cover everything as best I can, and try to put as much detail into this as much as I can. So let's get started here. First off, you're going to have your ground work clamp, whatever. It's pretty flimsy, but it does the job. It has this nice copper coat, threaded copper inside here. I run, and you guys see I have a welding table here. I built this when I got the welder. I built it for this table, or built a table for the welder, and this thing does well. I just leave it hooked onto the table. I don't get a lot of sparking or anything like that. You can check the bolts on here when you get it to make sure it's tight. Nothing crazy like that. All of these are going to have these twist style lugs for the connection ports for the most part. So what it is just a circle with a little tip on the end of it. You put it into the receptacle and you turn it to the right, and that's how you tighten it. You pop it back to the left and it comes off. Pretty simple. That's going to be your ground clamp. Next process we're going to do is stick welding. Okay, so your stick welder, this is a DC machine. So for all the processes you're going to have it, it's a DC machine or DC welder, and the stick welding process runs per the manual as a DCEN. So that's going to be a DC electrode negative process. Okay, if you guys don't understand a whole lot about DCEN or DCEP, electrode positive, there is a difference between the two. Now, there's nothing in the instructions about not being able to reverse the polarity on this machine. So if you're aware of what that is essentially you can take your ground, you can take your electrode, and you can switch them over. So per the manual, it asks you to run this in DC electrode negative. Gotta make sure I get that right. DC electrode negative. I have switched these cables and ran it on the positive port, and it has welded just fine. The thing about DC electrode negative is it has less penetration on the weld. Now if you're welding an electrode DCEP, electropositive, it has a better penetration or a better weld. So nothing I've seen in the manual talks about reversing that polarity, but for all my research on the internet, it basically states that you can just manually do that on most machines and you won't have a problem. So that's what I have done. I actually weld this with DCEP with the electrode in the positive port, and we'll explain that. That'll be on the front of the machine. I'll explain that a little bit later in detail. But just so you know, that's something that's there that you're probably not going to get explained in the manual. But I have been doing that, and it's been working fine for me. So do at your own risk. Alright guys, so the next process that we're going to talk about is the MIG process. This is probably the most comprehensive one that this machine has, and I would say it's probably actually the best process that this unit does for my application. So what you have here is a decent MIG unit, MIG gun, the cable and the feed and all that kind of stuff. It's good and solid. It doesn't have any kind of cheap wrap around it. The gun is light, has a great trigger on it, and has this standard Euro connection that you see with a lot of different MIG stuff. That's going to plug in right here on the front. Now This gun can run a lot of different processes, and that includes, it's going to be your flux core wire, which is your gasless self-shielding wire that you can weld with. Your hard wire steel, like if you're going to do MIG or MIG welding steel. And then it also has the ability to run aluminum. Yes, it will run aluminum. So Simder sends this to you, and it comes with a steel conduit liner that's inside, okay? So that's the standard that comes inside. A steel conduit liner is basically a spiraled, kind of ribbed steel tube that's inside, and it feeds metal wire through it just fine, or hard wire through it just fine. When you need to switch over to a MIG or to a aluminum process, if you're going to run 4043 or 53 series wire through it to do a MIG or pulse MIG or anything like that, you have to change out the liner. The Simder sends you the extra liner that goes with it, and that liner is a graphite liner. So basically what happens is you take that liner, you'll unscrew this port right here, you'll pull out the old liner, you'll put the new one. There's a bunch of videos on this. Simder actually has a good video on this, and there's a bunch of other videos online that will show you how to do that with the liner. The liner's going to come a little bit longer than it should be. It's just a standard, order liner, I would assume. So you'll have to trim it to the size that's on here. So the way that I did it, when I trimmed that graphite liner that came with it, is I pulled the old one out, I measured it, marked it, cut it, measured twice, and it fits just fine. I have found that the graphite liner can be a little bit of a pain to get in, and it can hang up a little bit. So I have run just a little bit of lubricant on there. You just take it out, put it back in a couple different times until it wants to go through, and keep the line as straight as you can when you insert that conduit. We'll talk about the contact tip and the nozzle. So you have your gas nozzle that's on here. It's just like any standard MIG. When I do flux core welding, which is your self-shielded wire that you don't have to use any gas with, I just weld with the nozzle off so it's easier to see. When I'm running MIG, obviously running MIG, I run the nozzle on there, as you have to, because you have to use a gas to shield the metal. And I bought the consumables kit that came with the Simder welder. Now, when it comes to consumables, I believe you have the ability to choose if you want a standard or metric system consumables kit. And I believe I didn't know that, or it wasn't available when I ordered this machine, and I got the metric one. So all of my stuff is in metric with this machine. It's not a big deal. You just have to be able to convert it, use a calculator or whatever, and figure out which size of contact tip in millimeters that you need to use with the machine for 030 or 035 wire, whatever it is that you're going to run. We'll go into some of the quirks on aluminum welding and whatnot probably in a different video, but there are some different things that go with that, and I'll explain some of the different wire types, what works and what doesn't work, but I think that's probably a video for another day. So that's pretty much the MIG process with this in a nutshell and what I've learned. All right, so the next process that we're going to talk about is the plasma cutting torch, okay? So here's your plasma cutter. I believe this is a number 17 style torch, and the interesting thing about this torch is I broke it pretty much right as soon as I got it. The safety shield that's on here, I ended up breaking it. It's supposed to have a retention spring that's in here. That no longer works. Not a big deal. This is a contact style tip. So for this machine and this torch and this consumables package, you have to have contact with the metal in order to cut. Some TIG torches are lift style, and they are above the metal, and they actually kind of just hover above. This one you have to be in direct contact with. This is the first plasma cutter that I've ever used, and I gotta say this is, it works fine for me. I have built templates and circle cutters for this thing, and it cuts very well. About the thickest that I've really cut with this is about 1/4 inch. Simder, I don't know what Simder exactly states that it's capable of. I can cut 1/4 inch. It's very slow, and sometimes I have to go back and hammer out some of the dross, is where the extra stuff that's in there. Sometimes you have to go back over your work a little bit, but it's a very slow go. If you're cutting aluminum or anything thinner than 1/4 inch, it seems to just go through it just fine. It's not a Pro Series, plasma cutter. It's, it does good for what it does. The shroud that it comes over this thing, not very good. It'll take some sparks, it'll take some heat, whatnot, but I would assume that this would melt if it got too hot and got exposed to too much heat. So it'd be a good idea to probably replace this with a better shroud on the outside. The connection ports for this are pretty simple. First off, we'll start with the switch. So the switch is a 2-pole switch, and it screws in. This is actually what activates the torch and tells the torch to turn on and off. This is the same port and the same style switch that's going to go into the TIG process that we'll explain here shortly. On the other end, we have an air inlet, threaded style. Air chuck is basically what it is, but you would screw this in, and this is where your compressed air will come in from your air compressor and blow out all the metal as you start cutting. Pretty simple, nothing out of the ordinary. Like I said, it cuts pretty well. It just it's not really made for anything, I would say, over 1/4 inch thick, unless you just really wanted to just spend a lot of time working on it. I have used it for gouging as well. It does a good job with that, and for a lot of the aluminum stuff that I work with, it just smokes right through it. So I really like that feature. But that's pretty much it for the plasma cutter. Nothing special, but it gets the job done. All right, last but not least, the final process we're going to go over is the TIG torch. So here is our TIG torch. Pretty simple little setup. So for those of you who have looked at this is not a scratch start TIG. This is a switch activated high frequency TIG torch. This machine with the high frequency TIG, it actually works very well. No foot pedal with this at all. So if you guys are looking and you just have to have a foot pedal, this older machine with this configuration is not what you want. Now with that being said, I thought that was going to be a bit of a deal breaker. When I actually got to using this a little bit, not being able to control the amps with a foot switch, it is a little bit of a hindrance, but I have learned to work with it and use it on use different techniques to get it to actually weld well. It's very good. A lot of the same standard practices as far as keeping a clean tungsten. Right now I'm running a 3/32 tungsten with a number 5 shield or glass on it, and it works pretty good. I've welded anything from small plate steel, sheet metal kind of stuff, all the way up to some bigger stuff. It's kind of nice to be able to use it to tack something together if you're trying to do fit up or anything, or if you're just into TIG welding. It's very capable of doing what you want to do. This is a WP17, is basically the style of the torch, and yeah, it works pretty slick. For ports, this has, again, we'll talk about this same 2-pole switch that you use on your plasma cutter. Same deal. It's going to go into that same port, and it's just a deal where you're going to screw it in. On the gas port, it has that same style as the plasma cutter, and it's going to go into that same port and just twist in. We'll go more into the controls on that in a little bit, and you guys will kind of understand how they set that up. I ordered the consumables kit with this, and it came with a whole bunch of different stuff, all the different gas caps. It has the shortened end, for the tightener or tensioner or whatever, and a ton of different consumables. TIG is kind of nice because you don't go through a whole heck of a lot. You can grind your tungstens down. It doesn't come with the tungsten rods, so you will need to buy those. Let's see, what else? That's pretty much it. What you see is what you get. Nothing special, not anything, high-end pro grade. But if you're wanting to get into TIG and you've never done it before, I would say this would be a great introductory into it. It's very simple. You know, you don't have to worry about learning how to run a pedal. It's all with a switch of a button. And, you know, you control your amps and you'll get to basically get that practice studying that puddle, which is a really big part of TIG welding. And I'm not a professional TIG welder by any means, but I have enjoyed it, and it does a pretty good job. So that's pretty much it for that. All right, so now I'm going to kind of show you guys the machine itself, this box. So as I stated, this is the older version of the Simder 4050 Pro. So you guys can kind of see the front end. You can see the back end. I've got a lot going on here. We'll explain that a little bit. But right now we're going to explain or go into the inside of this box. I'm going to bring the camera in, show you guys a little bit closer look, and kind of explain the different features inside, and then just my experience of what I have seen with this machine. All right, so let's get into it. So you can see on here I have your little 2 pound, 1 pound spools, whatever you call it, and I got some 4043 on here. So this machine will accept the small rolls like this. It'll also accept the big old 10 pounders. This is the 10 pound kit here. I've never put it on, but I assume it's pretty simple. It's got your little tightening nuts and the collar and all that, and you know, obviously you want to get this set up just right so that it moves, but it doesn't allow it to kick back and spool. There's really nothing special about that. So I'll bring your attention over here to the tensioner. I apologize for the lighting, guys. Let's see if I can bring that in a little bit better. All right, so this is pretty much all metal except for the screw caps and everything. This is pretty robust. It's going to come with all the different rollers that will unscrew from here, and you can switch those out. Like I said, mine are all in metric. It's going to have the grooved ones for flex core. It's going to have the, you know, smooth set for your hardwire stuff, and then it's also going to have a certain special one for aluminum as well. You know, it's pretty standard. You're going to tighten up your tension right here, and the rollers have one size on each groove, or per each roller, so you just flip them around and you can go to a different size. Turn your attention up here to this. This is what I would just consider or call a power bar. So on here it has, for the gas, the bar goes to the positive. For non-gas, which would be your flex core, it would go to the negative bar. So if you're welding mainly with MIG or any sort of gas process, it just stays on the positive. Obviously you'll want to turn the unit off when you switch that out. You don't want to electrocute yourself or anything like that. And that's kind of the simple, I guess, way of how everything goes in there. So yeah, pretty simple. Like I said, when you want to switch these, you just unscrew that, move it over, screw it in. You know, that's pretty much it. Okay, so here is the front in a nutshell. We're going to have your dust cover that's on top. The MIG port right here, which is where your MIG gun is going to hook in. I believe that's a Euro style. And then you have these 3 other ports down here on the bottom that were that lug turn style. You have your switch, and then you have the threaded gas port that's right here. So all of these ports are very multifunctioning. You have a positive, negative, and then you also have another ground that's right here for your plasma. So you want to refer to the owner's manual on exactly where you want to plug these in. I don't know everything off the top of my head, and they actually interchange so much that you almost really can't even color coordinate all of them, because different ports are used for different locations at different times. So your ground would go here, you know, maybe for your you know, stick welding process, or unless you're going to reverse it. But then your ground would go over here if you're going to plasma cut, and it just kind of moves around into different locations. So there's multiple uses for the ports. It's kind of interesting. This is your TIG gas port. So this is where your 100% argon is going to come through, and that's also where your compressed air is going to come through when you're using the plasma cutter. The switch is always going to be used, you know, for the same thing for the most part, but that's pretty simple there. You guys can see on the face here, you got, you know, your coolant fan ports over here, I believe, and then you just got some knobs, and it's actually very simple setup here. Not a whole lot going on. I know the newer version of this is, you know, it's all tricked out and digital display and looks all cool and everything. This is pretty just simple, standard, easy to read. So nothing special there. So that's that. I'm gonna flip this thing around, and I'm gonna show you guys what I did with the back, and go through a couple different things there. All right, guys, so here is the back of this machine. So there's a lot going on back here, and I'm gonna kind of break it down, and then I'm gonna show you guys what I did to make this a little bit better for myself. So first off, I'll take your attention over here to this regulator. This comes with the unit, just the regulator itself, and this is a water separator style. Has a little switch down here that you can empty out. This is a nice feature to have on it. My air compressor didn't have a separator, so it's nice to have that in there. I have caught some water inside there a couple times. The reason they have that on there is if you run your consumables through your air compressor, or you run your air compressor on the plasma cutting setting, it will eat up your consumables if you have water in your lines. It'll tear them apart faster. That's what I've always been told. So I would use this unless you have a better separator, and this also helps control the pressure that's coming from your air compressor. So if you don't have an air compressor that has a very good PSI control, this will get you dialed in. I don't really trust this that much. I just kind of get it in the zone of where I want it. The unit's going to come with a braided nylon hose. It's not this braided nylon hose. The stuff they have is extremely thin and brittle, and I blew it up on one of my first go-arounds. So I ended up with this higher grade stuff. This is some really thick, very good quality braided nylon, and I haven't had any issues since. Another thing is I don't believe it comes with the air chuck that fits in here where your air compressor fits in. It will come with this barb, but I don't believe it comes with the air chuck. I tried just a standard 180 that comes out this way, and I could not get my air compressor chucked to fit into that side because of the MIG hose that's up here. So what I ended up doing is getting one of these fancy little articulating air chucks, and I can fit this and mount this anywhere. That thing is solid. It doesn't leak. I don't have any issues with it. Everything on this welder I put together with the yellow, I believe it's PFE gas tape, and I've had really good success. No leaks or anything like that. So that's the air line right there. And while we're talking about air, we'll talk about the TIG. So your TIG port is right here. This is for your TIG welder, and this is a 1/4 inch barb that's coming out. So what I was initially trying to do, or had to do, was I had to put that nylon braid on here, tighten it down with a pipe clamp, try to get a screwdriver in here. It was a nightmare. So ideally what a guy I think would need to do is have some sort of shut-off valve on each one of these hoses. This is your TIG line coming in, and another, your air compressor line here. If you had a couple shut-offs and then you had a T that was right here, you could plug them in and then run your tank into another port right here. You wouldn't have to disconnect any hoses, and it would be pretty simple. Now, I searched around at my hardware store. I couldn't find anything that was remotely like that. I'm sure there's some stuff on the internet or a specialized store that you go to. But this is what I came up with. I put a pigtail on here with nylon braid, and I put a male-to-male 1/4 inch on the end of this. So what I do is when I want to switch processes from my plasma cutter, I plug it in here, put a pipe clamp on here, and if I need to use my TIG torch, I take that off from this pigtail. It's a lot easier to work with. Pop it off, plug the TIG torch on the other end, tighten it down, and I run those two processes. At some point in time, I'll get this switched around and I'll get some shut-off valves for it, but that's just how I'm running it right now. So it works pretty simple, and that's pretty much the gist of it. The majority of what I run is 100% argon. I don't run any C25 for MIG, just because I don't do a lot of steel MIG process. So it's pretty simple because I can use the 100% argon to TIG weld, and I can also use it for aluminum. So there's not a lot of switching on the tank either. That brings us to the next process or next port, which is your MIG gun or your MIG connection. Simder's going to send you this MIG hose. You know, it's nothing to write home about, but it gets the job done. You can see I've got some tape on here and everything. It's just a standard MIG connection port. If I can get my camera to focus here for us. There we go. And that's basically it. It stays in here all the time, and all I do is I just switch out this piece here on the tank for my regulator, and you know, we kind of go from there. Talking about the regulator, so Simder's not going to send you a regulator. You're going to have to buy your own. So I did that, and also they're not going to send you a tank, obviously. So you're going to need to figure out what kind of tanks you need. You can buy them used, or you can buy them new, however you want to do it. But just know none of the gas process equipment is going to be in there as far as your regulator and everything. So you'll have to furnish that. Obviously you got your switch back here, and then your fan, and you know, a couple or some different labeled information on the back of here. But yeah, that's pretty much the that's all of that, and we'll go into the controls here in just a minute and explain some of that. All right, guys, so now we're going to talk about the control panel here. Now, in the manual, they're going to give you some general information about how some of this stuff works, but there's some things that they left out. So we're going to go through it. I'm going to explain the different settings, and I'm also going to explain some of the quirks and custom settings that I run to kind of make this whole thing work out. You'll notice here, I'm going to kick this machine on in just a second. The fan is a continual run. It's noisy. It kicks on. It does not turn on, you know, or turn up as it gets, you know, working or starts going through its duty cycle. It's just constantly on. So I apologize for the noise, but it is what it is. So you guys can see it's spooling up there and doing its thing. So we'll kind of just go left to right-ish here and explain this as in the best detail that I can, okay? So on the left here, you have your various processes, okay? That's pretty simple. You've got MIG, synergic MIG, pulse MIG, cut, MMA or stick weld, and then your TIG weld function. We'll start off at the MIG. So this is basic standard MIG setting. So you have the ability to change voltage, wire speed, ampage, and then you also have certain adjustments like inductance, burn back time, and all of that. One of the unique things about this machine that I pretty much always run because I like to, you know, this machine is dialed in and it knows what settings it needs to run for the most part, is a synergic MIG. Synergic MIG is basically pre-programmed settings that the machine knows to adjust the voltage to the ampage or wire speed that you set. So as I move wire speed, amp, the volt is going to automatically go. All the settings that I run with like flex core or anything like that are pretty consistent. It runs pretty nice. And you're still going to have those abilities to change the burn back and inductance on there. So that's a nice feature. Okay, so the next setting we're going to talk about is the pulse MIG feature. Pulse MIG is where the machine is dialed in on a particular setting where it varies the voltage ampage up and down and allows you to MIG weld without putting too much heat into what you're trying to, into your work. Now that's the most basic non-scientific way that I can explain it, is that it allows you to weld on stuff that is thinner and it puts less heat into your work, causing you less distortion, less blow through, all of that kind of stuff. And it's a very weird setting to actually weld on. It makes a different kind of sound. It's very nice. And it's a lot of the reason why I bought this machine and I like it so much. It runs very well. We'll explain a little bit more of that when we get into the gas process over here. Next is going to be your cut. In your cut setting, I have it on the 110, 120 volt setting right now, so it's only going to go up to 37 amps for the cut. for plasma cutting. You know, you have post-flow, pre-flow, all that kind of stuff that you can adjust. You know, pretty nice feature there, but for the most part, real simple. MMA, or your stick welding function, it doesn't really get any more simple than this. You just basically turn your amps up, and you can see the amps are topped out there on this you know, 110, 120 volt setting. You know, if you compare this setting to like some of the settings that are in the Miller welding app or anything like that, these are not even close. I think for the most part, I'm usually welding way lower on ampage on this machine than what the recommended you know, amounts are. So it's a little different. With stick welding, you have hot start, which is really nice. It gives you a faster start. It ups your ampage when you go to do when you first strike an arc. I usually have mine halfway in the middle. It goes all the way up to 10. You know, you can go to 0. I usually run about 6. Arc force is gonna turn up how much dig the stick welder has, how much dig it has into the metal. I usually kind of leave that at 0 because it's just not really a setting I use too much. And then there's this URD function, which is essentially a safety function where if you have it on, you can, it lowers the ampage so that it doesn't arc if it's on a table or something like that. So if your electrode hits something, it's supposed to kind of safeguard that. I don't ever use it just because I try to keep my electrode out of the way. And then you have your take function. Same deal here. All your adjustments are in the right knob here. You can turn it all the way up. This works really well on the 110, 120 volt range. You don't have to have it up on 220 to really get a good TIG weld. It runs great. All right, moving up to, we'll take care of these two features here. You have a spooling feature for your rollers right here at the top right. You can hear that winding up. And that is to feed your wire through your for your MIG gun, so that you don't have to hold the trigger down. Nice feature. Most welders probably have that. And then the second feature here is the gas solenoid. So this is how you can purge your system and pour gas from your regulator. Make adjustments to your regulator. You know, pretty simple deal, right? Interesting quirk about this machine. So if you go to the pulse MIG setting, it's a MIG process. You would think this would work, but it doesn't. You cannot purge your gas or spool your wire. I don't know why it's that way, but that's just how it is. So if you want to adjust it, you have to go back up to the MIG or synergic MIG function in order to complete that. So just a quirk. All right, guys, so we'll talk about this bar right here. I don't have a lot of, the manual doesn't really tell a whole lot about these different settings here. I have reached out to Simder and talked to them about basically what they are. They're basically gas mixture or processes that go in here. You have your CO2 mix, flux, ALMG, and ALSI. When you're running pulse MIG and you're welding aluminum, you will be in the ALSI category. I was able to get an answer on that. I believe the ALMG is for hardwire steel if you're running pulse MIG. Now, if you're in the synergic MIG function, you'll see it has the different settings for that. It will allow you different settings for that, and you'll see the amp or the voltage go up when you go to CO2, mix, flux. ALMG is the same as ALSI. Okay, so I'd like to get a little more information on some of those, but that's just kind of how it is. Moving across over here, you have the 2T, 4T, and spot. Your 2T is going to be continuous operation, or when you squeeze the trigger on the gun, it will spool out and weld. 4T is going to be a continuous operation. You can click I believe you hold it down or you click it twice or whatever it is, and it will continuously weld and then a spot function that will just do a quick spot weld when you squeeze the trigger. I don't use those other two, I just keep it on 2T, works fine. This is your wire size adjustment and you can see it's in that lovely metric style for wire size. And you can adjust those as you go along. I'm sure there's changes to different functions. But that's pretty much it. You know, there's a lot of different stuff on here that you can run through, but it's pretty simple for the most part. You'll find different settings that work for you, but like I said, most of the settings that I find with the machine here are not the same as in any manual or anything like that. So you guys will really want to kind of keep a log and a list of what burns good, and kind of go from there. So that is the controls and everything that goes in here, and the various quirks that I've seen with it. So we'll go ahead and shut this off, and then we'll finish up. Alright guys, so that's pretty much all of the different functions and all the processes and the little quirks that go along with it. Now, I will tell you that there are a couple other things that I've learned with this welder. So as I stated before, I bought this welder so I could weld with aluminum. Aluminum was a process that I really wanted to get into, and I wanted a pulse MIG to be able to do that. So give you an example, I work on boats and all kinds of aluminum sheet metal, a lot of thin stuff. A regular standard MIG aluminum gun just wasn't going to cut it for me, and I didn't want to get an AC TIG welder because I wouldn't be able to do the large amount of work that I like to do with aluminum. And when you start working on boats and you start doing a lot of long welds and stuff like that, you need something that's going to fill that product up pretty quick. So what I've learned with the aluminum is, like I explained on the controls, is that you put that in that ALSI setting. You're going to put it into the pulse MIG setting. You'll run 100% argon with your regulator, and you have to make sure that you run 4043 style wire through this machine. So I ran 53 series wire through here, and it didn't weld worth a darn on the pulse MIG setting. Pulse MIG with this machine is in a spray arc style. So what it does is, as the wire comes through the gun, it will spray into the product, and it actually kind of just, it's almost like a spray can. It sprays that aluminum into the weld pool, but you'll have a little bit of stick out that the wire will come out of the end of the nozzle. If you guys want to see more about spray arc or spray transfer or pulse MIG, go to weld.com, go to a couple other reputable YouTube sites, and they will do a very good demonstration on how that whole process works. But here's what I'll say. So if you're going to weld aluminum, it's got to be extremely clean, and that the whole process is a little bit different from like standard MIG or flux or anything that you would run. But yeah, 4043 was the only wire that worked. It comes out great. It runs smooth. When I ran 53 series wire, it would melt immediately coming out. I got burned back. That was just terrible. And I did my research and found out that 53 series wire has a very low melting point. So when I was running it through the machine, it was just coming out and just globs and just junk, and it was a mess. So if you're going to run this machine with the pulse MIG setting, use 4043 or something else with that similar melt value to it. Alright, so last thing I'm going to talk to you guys about is the manual for this machine. So this is the manual that it comes with, and it's more of a pamphlet or a leaflet than anything. It's 22 pages, and most of it is warning stuff in there for safety. Obviously they have to put that in there. It'll tell you where to plug things in. It'll tell you voltages and different stuff like that, but it does not get into the weeds. It doesn't explain a lot of different processes, and it definitely doesn't talk about a whole lot on procedure or how to really get the most out of this machine. So Simder can definitely improve on their owner's manual. I've talked to Simder, I've reached out to them, and they have told me that they are working on that issue. Whether or not they'll get one out for this particular unit in any certain amount of time, I don't know. But I was hoping I could make this video, help you guys out a little bit. If you like what you see, please like, subscribe, and if you guys want to see some other videos or maybe see some welding videos with it, with me actually using it and demonstrating it, I will do that. Just let me know what you guys want to see. But I hope this helped you out, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and God bless you and have a great day.